Welcome to another episode of Queen City Reds. We're here with a special guest today, Clay Snowden. Clay, thanks for being here. We're going to draft the 20 most important Reds players of the 2025 season. Basically, we're drafting the whole team, essentially. So if you're left off this list, I don't know what that says for you. But Clay, thanks for being on here. Can you tell the people where they can find you before we get started here?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's the first time in 2025, I believe. So probably my third or fourth time overall, but I'll always enjoy chatting Reds with you. I'm on Twitter, of course, spending too much time on there at Clay_SNO.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, we will get started. This might take a while, so I'm going to give Clay the first pick, being the generous host that I am. I'm sure the number one pick will be a shock to some people, but Clay, take it away.
Yeah, it's Ellie De La Cruz, right? I mean, it doesn't get any. I actually had a debate. I was on a walk earlier today and was debating on who I would put one. And I actually think number two is closer to number one than we may realize, at least on my list. But if you were to lose Ellie, think of how different this team would be. And that's kind of where I settled with Ellie being number one for obvious reasons, the highest ceiling of probably, any player on this team.
Yeah, I'm with you. Obviously, Ellie was a no-brainer there, and what he does for the team and what he does overall is obviously he's just a huge difference maker. I can't imagine how this team looks without Ellie in the lineup. So obviously number one there. I actually am going to go ahead and go with number two, and I've actually think I've kind of swapped here. So I don't know if this is the same number two you had or not. We're doing this. We don't know each other's list, so this is great. But I was going to go with somebody, and now I switched it in my head, and I'm going to go with Matt McLain, number two.
Okay, so
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
for those at home, I have a printed off piece of paper like old school here, so I need to check McLean off. He was number three on my list actually. So
He was originally
um,
three on my list, and then I swapped him. I had
go ahead.
flashbacks. I had flashbacks of last season of what this offense was without Matt McLean, and I kind of got to thinking, um, you know, I think he's that important to this team. I think he is somebody that you can put in the top three spots of the order. He's a pretty good second baseman, I think, and he just seems like when he's in the lineup compared to somebody like Santiago Espinal, I think it's that big of a difference. So I kind of swapped there last second, but I just think McLean could be that big of a difference maker if he plays like he did in 2023.
Yeah, and I agree. Like I said, I had him at three, and I love Matt McLean and what he brings to this team. And I think that was a huge reason last year why they struggled was not having a healthy Matt McLean. And kind of what you were saying, the drop off, whether it be Lux or whether it be Espinal or whoever it may be, is pretty substantial. And he can be the table setter. And I wrote an article earlier this year of kind of Matt McLean being the Robin to Ellie De La Cruz Batman. And I do think that they can have that 1-2 punch. Keep in mind he's still a pretty small sample size in the major, so he still has to prove that that's the level of player he is. What we saw in 2023, of course, missing 2024 with injury. So he still has to prove it. But if he does, or if he's even close to that level of player, we have a humongous talent on our hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is basically, you always hear about the sophomore slump per se. This is essentially his sophomore year, because obviously missed all of last season due to injury. But like I said, and like you mentioned, if he can play anywhere near he did in 2023, he's just such a huge upgrade for this team. So
So
back to
number
number three.
three
Number three. I think I know who you're
was
going to
number
take there, but let's see.
was number two on my list. And like I said, I even debated putting him number one, and that's Hunter Green.
Yep, that's
And
who that's
the
who I
reason
swapped with.
why, yeah, and the reason why is I just think that Hunter Green's ceiling is still not there. I mean, I still don't think he's reached his ceiling. I don't see why this guy can't be one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. And I was not always in that camp with him as a prospect and coming up. I had my reservations, and he's just done so much to develop as an actual pitcher instead of somebody with a nice fastball and, you know, a slider he can work off of it. And he just keeps improving. But I also just think the importance of having the ace of a staff is so important. And if the Reds are lucky enough to get to a playoff series, having that bona fide number one guy you can count on to go out there and help you win a game is so crucial and something that I think this team without Hunter Green would lack in a pretty big way. So to me, Hunter Green number two, he slides into number three here on this combined list.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just huge to have an ace, on your team, and I think he last year showed that he obviously can be that, making the All-Star team. It's been interesting hearing him talk in the offseason. He said it on the Jim Day podcast, and then he said it to MLB Network yesterday. Is he kind of talked about how he keeps hitting these strides. Like he struggled in the minors and then he got over it. And then he struggled in the majors and then he got over it. Then he became an all-star and then he got over it. And now he put on his goals. He wants to win the Cy Young. It's kind of cool to see him, as major leaguers, you think these guys are automatic and they're so good and they do what they do. But he's kind of talked about like how making the all-star team is a big deal for him. And it tells him he can do it. And now he wants to shoot for his next goal and then next goal. So it's kind of been cool hearing him talk about that. And yeah, I'm with you. I had him at 2, and then I swapped Matt McClain there last second, but I don't think you can go wrong either way. All right, number 4. I think this might be where it goes off the rails, I think, for me.
Yeah, it is.
I think some people are going to say this is a crazy pick, but maybe I've talked myself into him way too much. I'm going with Christian Encarnacion Strand here. And the reason I'm going there is because I think his upside is a 30 home run guy. So, and then I think his downside is what we saw last year. So it's not necessarily, I'm not saying he's the 4th best player on the team or the, top 5 player on the team, but I think the variation of what we saw of Encarnacion Strand, of what he can be and what he saw last year, whether that was because of injuries or not, it has a big effect on this team. I mean, if you can plug in someone that's going to hit 30 plus home runs in the lineup, I think that's absolutely huge for this team. If he goes in and hits 190 like he did last year, you're like, where's our power bat that everyone's been saying we needed all off season? You're kind of relying on him. So, like I said, I think people are probably going to be like, I reached way up there, but I just think his upside, I think, in just having a power bat somewhere in the lineup there, I think he can just be that important to this team. What are your thoughts on that?
I like it. And this is where the list got a lot more difficult for me as well. I had CES at 9th.
Okay.
9th. Why? The reasons you gave are all true, but there are similar reasons, kind of devil's advocate of it, is why I had him at 9th, is because I still need to see more from him. I still think that he sees too many pitches that he thinks he can hit that are outside the zone. And with a guy like CES, a guy who has the ability to do the kind of damage he does, I want him hunting pitches that he can impact. I don't want him chasing pitches 3 inches above the zone and just hoping to make contact and putting a single into left field or lining out or whatever it may be. Like, it's not even for me, like, you have to walk more. Like, I'm not trying to make him a different player, but just maybe lay off that pitch and hope or wait for a better pitch that you can do damage. Because when he does do damage, the ball's going to fly. I do see the 30 home run upside. I agree with that. Just the range of outcomes dropped him down my list to 9th. But I like it. Kind of a bold take. The one I
bold
have,
take, hot take, Greg right here. But I mean, you've seen it in spring training. He's hit a couple home runs on pitches that are nowhere near the zone, and you're like, I'm not sure that's going to translate in the regular season or not. I mean, it may, but and it's just interesting. He's an interesting player,
and that's the type of player he is. Swing at stuff out of the zone, and it's going to, it's just kind of a troubling profile, but one that he has proved to be successful. He's an outlier.
Yeah,
That's been through the minors, short stint in the majors. Let's see what it looks like once he has a larger stint. My number 4, I'm going to pick at number 5 overall here. Keep in mind, this is my number 4 guy. And you're going to laugh. It's Nick Martinez.
Okay.
Nick Martinez. And let me explain why. Nick Martinez was not only awesome for this team, but we're talking about the most important Reds players for this season. Martinez is filling a big spot in the rotation. They need to bump him because of X, Y, and Z to the bullpen. He can do that. You need a long man, whatever role you need him to pitch in. If it were to come to that, he can do that. But it's not only his talent. It's the Reds gave him $21 million. He has to be one of the most important players for this Reds team, or else that 21 million could have been allocated elsewhere. That kind of money should be spent on players who are in the Reds, level of spending. 21 million a year should be spent on players who are impacting at the top 5, top 7 range of your team. So give me Nick Martinez. I guess he's number 5 now as the collective list.
Yeah, I had him at actually number 6, so I was right there with you.
Okay.
Wasn't that crazy for me? I'm with you. I mean, he had a WAR of 3.5 last year. I think was like top 5 on the team, which is incredible when you look back at how his season started. He would be so good out of the bullpen, and then every time he'd start, he'd go out there and kind of get shelled. And then by September, he was NL Pitcher of the Month with like a 1 ERA in September, and yeah, what a signing he's been so far for the Reds. And if he can duplicate or replicate what he did last year, I'm with you. And just the different roles he could pitch is just huge for this team. I mean, even when he was pitching in the bullpen really well last year, you could go in and pitch 3 innings out of the bullpen, or give you 2 innings out of the bullpen, or whatever. It's just that versatility is huge, I think, for a player. So not that crazy for my list. All right, so I'm here between 2 players again here. And I'm going to take my
before
first.
You say,
yeah,
we're looking at number 6, right?
Number 6.
Number 6.
So here, yeah, let's recap. We'll try to recap after every 5 picks. So we went Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, Hunter Green, CES, and Nick Martinez for the top 5. So number 6, I'm going to pick my first pitcher here, and I'm going to go with Nick Lodolo. Again, I think Lodolo's a guy with a lot of upside that I'm talking myself into, or been talking myself into a couple of years, if he can stay healthy. And obviously that's been an issue. Last year, he pitched more last year, but he still had, I think, 4 IL stints. But I think the blister thing always gets weird with him and kind of threw him off. And he mentioned one thing I didn't realize is he was talking mentioned the Gym Day podcast, that he said last year in spring training, he basically couldn't do any leg workouts because he had something going on with like his legs. So he was only doing like upper body stuff. And he basically pitched the season with that. And I don't think I realized he had some of those, ailments going on, which I think as a pitcher, if you're dealing with stuff like that, it can definitely affect you because you have to use your lower body as a pitcher. I think a lot of people think you just throw with your arm, but pitchers that throw that hard and move like that, they are using their lower body a ton. So that's just something that stuck out to me. And I think the reason I'm picking him so high is I just think he has ace potential. I think so. If he could even have pitch 150 innings and give you an ERA of 3 or a little above 3, I think it's a fantastic 1-2 punch with him and Hunter Green. So I'm probably going upside there. But yeah, that's who I'm going with, number 6.
This is where I struggled the most with a single player where to rank Nick Lodolo, and he actually landed 12th on my list because of it. And it has to do with, I just need to see it before I can believe it. And I loved Lodolo. I had him above Hunter Green in prospect rankings and thought he would be a better pick than Hunter Green at one point. I just need to see full string of health. I need to see really good pitching strung together. And at this point, I just could not put him higher than 12. But I like what you're saying. Like, if it clicks, yeah, he's right up there with these players that we're talking about and a huge asset. I just think he has to earn back some of my trust and faith in him first.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I think I went kind of on upside, but it's totally fair. And I think the number one issue people have with Lodolo at the moment is, can he stay healthy? I mean, it seems like every year he's kind of had nagging injuries, and obviously that's an issue when you're a starting pitcher and you need to be relied on every 5 or 6 days. So, all right, who you got for number 7?
Spencer Steer. The reason why I landed here, I know he's injured. Like, we'll see how that all looks. But imagine this outfield without Spencer Steer. We've already kind of seen like roster projections. Like, is Blake Dunn making it? Will Benson? Like, it drops off fast. And Spencer Steer, again, injured right now. However, this is a guy that has played pretty much over, what is it? Over, I think it's 158 games each of the past two seasons. 2020, 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. Like, I think that there's a baseline that he provides that's fair to put him in the top 10 here. I need to see him healthy. I need it. And I also think he's a much better player than what he showed last year. He started off really well, kind of tapered off. He hits lefties well. Let's see if he can even improve on what he's done as a good job against righties too. It's not fantastic, but I just think that there's a really good hitter in there. And I also think it's going to contradict myself because he's injured, but his durability that he has provided, and let's hope he comes back healthy and can continue that durability streak, even if he misses some time in the beginning.
Yeah, again, I had him at number 8, so right behind you. I think he's that important. I think with the season he had last year, I think he's almost kind of underappreciated a little bit now. I know a lot of Reds fans really like Spencer Steer, but he kind of fell off towards the end of the year last year, and I don't think his numbers were just as good as you'd think. And I think, like you said, I think he's got that baseline that you're pretty comfortable with and confident that he's just a solid player, just a solid guy. He did rip the cover off the ball last year with runners in scoring position. But yeah, I'm with you. I had him right there on my list. So number 8, I'm going with Tyler Stevenson. I think Tyler Stevenson is kind of similar to Spencer Steer. I think he's just kind of you hope you get a baseline with Tyler Stevenson of he's going to hit. I think when he's not asked to be a number 3 or 4 hitter in the lineup, he's going to seem even better than he is, because last year, I mean, the Reds had to plug him right in the middle of the lineup because the lineup was that bad at times. So if you're hitting Tyler Stevenson 6th or 7th, I think that sets up for a pretty solid lineup. I don't know where they're going to hit him this year. Maybe they still hit him up high, but I think he's just when he's on, and I think a couple years ago was kind of a fluke with him where he just really struggled. He was bouncing back from that big surgery. He's just a really solid offensive catcher. And I think he's going to be asked to catch less this year with Jose Trevino. Now, I think Trevino is a huge upgrade defensively. He's pretty bad offensively. But I think you'll be able to see a guy like Tyler Stevenson. Maybe they'll put him, as the designated hitter a little bit more. And we don't have, again, I'm just hating on Santiago Espinal, I guess this show, but you don't have someone like Santiago Espinal as the DH, where we saw plenty of times last year. I just think Stevenson kind of has that baseline, like you said, with Steer, of where you're going to get with him. He's a solid player. He's never going to be a huge power guy. For as big as he is, he kind of slaps the ball the other way, but that's kind of how he hits. And when he'll pull a fastball and you see that big power and you're like, dang, Tyler Stevenson, why can't you do that more often? But he's always been one of my favorite players, and I think he's just a solid player.
And I agree. I had him at number 6 on my list, so he slots in here at number 8. I agree with what you say, and I also think there's starting to be kind of a leadership component here, where he's kind of been around for a few years now, and he's made it through struggles. He's shown the offensive upside, then it kind of dipped, and then last year he came back with a great season. And I've been a Stevenson fan since day one. I think he's awesome. I want the Reds to re-sign him. I think he's that important. So that's why I had him at 6. He slots in number 8 here.
Perfect.
Number 9? You want to go on to number 9?
Let's go.
This is somebody who I had at number 7, and I do not feel confident about it at all. It is Alexis Diaz. And the reason why I have him at 7 here is because if we get the best version of Diaz, cool. Like, we have the quote unquote closer. That's pretty important. Like, your closer is pretty important. And it's also, this isn't the best players, it's the most important. If he's horrible, that's a big, big hole that they have to fill. Yeah. So to me, Alexis Diaz comes in here, like I said, number 7 on my list, number 9 overall. I think that it's a big year for him to kind of show that the struggles are behind him. He's going to have to find the zone more often, and I don't know if he can. I really don't. If you said you had to put $1,000 on, I'd say he can't. Um, but at the end of the day, he's important. He's going to get big, big opportunities late in games.
Yeah, I like it. I had him down the list a little. I actually had him at 18, which that's way down there. But I don't
Once you
I
hear
guess
my 18, you'll laugh.
I started it. I might have just not moved him up enough. I started it out by a list of war from last year, and then I started switching guys around. And I just think the Reds have a solid bullpen. And maybe I'm somebody that thinks, a guy can come in and close a little bit easier. But I mean the trajectory of Diaz has been wild. I remember when he first came with the Reds and started pitching like the seventh inning or sixth inning, he quickly got pushed up to being like high leverage situations because it seemed like guys won't even get on base against him. And now it's like you think of Alexis Diaz and you're like, just please get ahead of people in the count. Like, do not go down 3-0 to the first two batters you face. And I think I'm kind of with Diaz, I'm almost like you were with Lodolo a little bit of like earn back my trust of like come in and throw some strikes and like get ahead of batters and use your stuff,
And
So
that's why he's so important to me, is
yeah,
because I don't think he's a top 10 best player on the team, but I know that he's going to get opportunities. Now, maybe Tito says, I can't stand this guy and throws him in the sixth inning. Who knows? We'll wait and see. But I think like if he does string it together, the importance of having a guy who's able to get a strikeout, in a high leverage situation is going to be huge.
yeah. And the Reds were awful in 1-run games last year. So if you're going to have a lot of close games, you need somebody to be able to close it down for you. So I like it. I like it. All right. This one, I'm the same way. Number 10, I had like 5 people that I could have put here. I'm going to go TJ Friedel.
Ooh,
TJ Friedel, I think because I think he's going to play most days. I think he's going to be somebody that Francona puts in the lineup every day against lefties, against righties. I would probably prefer him not lead off, but based on what I've seen in spring training, it seems like he's going to lead off. I'd probably prefer him, like in the 9-hole or something along those lines. But with that being said, if he's going to play every day and if he's going to lead off, it's very important that he plays well. He struggled a little bit last year. We saw some weird defensive things from last year. He wasn't very fast last year. I know he was dealing with some hamstring injuries, so let's hope that had a lot to do with it. But again, it's funny. We keep talking about the 2023 versions of some of these guys because last year was just so bad for a lot of reasons, injuries, not performing, etc. But I just think if he's going to be the leadoff guy and he's going to be your everyday center fielder, he needs to be somebody that plays well. And the Reds don't exactly have a backup center fielder that if he doesn't play well, that's just going to come in there and who is it? Stuart Fairchild, Will Benson. I
yeah.
mean, those are two guys that you cannot play every day. They're platoon players at best. So for all those reasons, I think he's kind of vitally important to this team.
I had him on my list, and I have no idea how, but I had to like insert somebody else and move people around, and he disappeared off my list
He
somehow.
disappeared. He's like
But
number
I
30.
had him around 13.
Okay.
So 10 here is fine with me. I do think I just think that 4 WAR player that we saw in 2023 is not all that realistic of an outcome year after year. I think that, obviously he's done it, so that's at least his ceiling, right? Um, to me, TJ Friedel's more of a bottom of the order type of player, and
Yeah.
like you said, like he just struggles to stay healthy at so many stops. It's just hard for me to put him up there. And do you know how old he is, by the way? This always surprises me.
I'm going to guess 29.
He is, let me pull it up for I just need to double check. Yeah, he's 29, but I think he
Okay.
turned 30. This is great live air here. Yeah, he turns 30 in August. Like I just assumed he was younger, I guess, because he hasn't been
He,
around that long. But
he was one of those
um,
guys that got called up kind of late, and he was never really like a top prospect. It was kind of like I remember when I think I put it out on Twitter one time and said like, why are we giving TJ Friedel at bats? Like he's clearly never going to be a major leaguer, and here he
yeah,
is.
yeah. I like him. I really do. I just need to see him stay healthy, and I kind of think his most likely outcome is more of an average-ish player with injury concerns. So to me, it's, falls around that 10 to 13 range.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So to recap, 6 through 10, we have number 6, Nick Lodolo. Number 7, Spencer Steer. Number 8, Tyler Stevenson. Number 9, Alexis Diaz. And number 10, TJ Friedel. Number
And
11.
number 11
Yes.
was number 8 on my list, above Nick Lodolo, Brady Singer. Brady
Nice.
Singer, which is probably my biggest surprise to myself. Like when I put him there, I was like, I can't believe this, really. But I kind of started talking myself into the idea of, okay, Hunter Green is the one. I don't really trust Nick Lodolo yet. I need Nick Martinez to be important to this team. And then I fell on Brady Singer here because I think trading away a piece that at least had some positive value, you could debate how much, in Jonathan India, for a player like this, I just see this rotation as really important. And I'm going to overrate pitching because I think that the offense has enough guys that could click and whatnot. So to me, it's I really, really want to overrate pitching, especially playing in Great American Ballpark. I think Brady Singer's a sneaky good fit. I think that he's going to have a good year and kind of surprise some people as well. So give me Brady Singer at number 11.
I like it. I actually had him at 9 initially, and I changed TJ Friedel to go above him. So I'm with you. I'm pretty high on Brady Singer for whatever reason. When he was with the Royals, his name would come up in trade talks for the last couple of years, and I
Yeah.
always have kind of talked myself into him. I think 2 years ago he kind of struggled a little bit, and I was like, this is a perfect situation to kind of buy low on a guy like him. And then last year, I mean, this is another thing. Francona's mentioned this multiple times in the offseason. Is like he's going to give you innings, and he's not going to give you innings in somebody that is like Bronson Arroyo when he was 37 and he's going to have a 6 ERA give you innings. That's like he's going to give you innings. His ERA is probably going to be somewhere around 4. It could be a little lower, it could be a little higher, but just a solid guy in the middle of the rotation, I think. So I'm with you. I think he's an important part of the team. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how he looks at the end of the year and how Jonathan India looks with Kansas City to kind of see how that trade pans out. So, all right, number 12, I'm going to keep it on the pitching front, and I'm going to go with Andrew Abbott. So
Okay.
I think we've hit all 5 starters at this point, I think. I know Abbott, like Steer, is injured at the moment. He is going to start, I believe, this week at some point, apparently for the first time. So they say he may be ready for the opener. He may not be. If he is, it sounds like he isn't going to be fully ramped up. He may be able to give you 5 innings or something like that. But I just think Abbott, again, I think I'm with you. I think starting pitching is so important. And if you're saying Andrew Abbott's the 5th starter, you're talking about a guy who has had a 3.87 ERA, a 3.72 ERA the last 2 seasons. He almost gave you 150 innings last year. He's not a guy that's going to go out there and throw 7 innings and strike out 10, but he's a guy that if Andrew Abbott's your 5th starter and he's going up against the other team's 5th starter, I'd like your chances. So I'm with you. I think starting pitching is very important, and I think Andrew Abbott's a good guy to have at the back end of the rotation.
Yeah, he's a polarizing player. Somebody who I've always kind of stood up for in a way because, a lot of people like to talk about the expected stats or this.
Mhm.
He's projected. Like at the end of the day, like what actually happened matters.
Yeah.
Now, for this discussion, we're talking about predicting a season, so it's a little different. But you look at this guy; he's pitched 247 innings to a 3.78 ERA. Like at some point, the expected this, expected that, like has to be wiped out because the sample size of him beating it, he's an outlier,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
okay. So to me, it's Andrew Abbott. I personally had him at 14. Um, I could be talked into having him in the top 10, honestly, like anywhere in between. And I think he gets a little too much hate's not the right word, but people are too hard on him. At the end of the day, he's a 5th starter. And that's kind of why I had him further down, is because I had so many other starters already in my top here. But yeah, I love that shout of Andrew Abbott.
Yeah, and if you think of like how much more confident you are with Andrew Abbott on the mound, than Carson Spires or Graham Ashcraft. Like, just
Yep.
think of it that way. Like, everybody's taking Andrew Abbott 100 times out of 100 times over those two, and nothing against those two. Like, again, it's a fifth starter, but if you're talking fifth starter, Andrew Abbott is a very solid fifth starter. So, all right, who
Yep.
you got number
Absolutely.
13?
Number 13 is number 10 on my personal list. That's Jamer Candelario. And this is kind
That
of a
was my
bit of
next
what
pick, so
you,
I love it.
yeah, kind of what you've been saying of, oh, this guy needs to bounce back. He could do this. He could do that. Like, Candelario was number 10 on my list because he does have that hypothetical can bounce back, but he's higher than some of these other players that are in a similar situation because he's proven that he can do it at the major league level. It hasn't always been consistent. He's kind of one of those guys who's had good year, bad year, good year, bad year. He still hit 20 home runs last year. I think 15 of them came at home. He's somebody who could, if healthy, really destroy Great American Ballpark. And I just think that he's a good fit. There's a chance he could play third base and be the answer at third. And there's a chance he could, be at first or DH. Like he offers a little bit of versatility, switch hitter. So to me, number 10 on my personal list, number 13 on our combined list, Candy.
I love that pick. I almost actually took him where I took Friedel, but I moved him back a little bit. But I agree. I mean, like you said, he hit 20 home runs. He only played in 112 games because he dealt with the injury at the end of the year. He dealt with the injury midway through the year. So you're talking could have been maybe close to 25, 30 if he played the full season. And he's very streaky. He's very streaky. I know if you look at his like baseball reference page in April, he hits like 100, 150 every year. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But he's just very streaky. I mean, in May and June last year, he went crazy, and he carried the lineup for a couple months. So I think he can be one of those guys that can just be a solid guy in the middle of the lineup, and you feel pretty decent when he's up to the plate. And that's not really how he felt, I feel like, a lot of the times last year, and it didn't help his struggles at third base.
There were several times last year where you and I would tweet out different pictures of different candy that we would eat when he would do something good. What's going to be the candy of choice for opening day?
I like that. I'll go with the Snickers. I'm a big Snickers guy. Big Snickers
No,
fan.
it's yeah, I'm a gummies guy. So like I'm
Okay.
gonna go with some Jolly Rancher chewy gummy thing, whatever. Like I usually just go to like the Dollar Tree or like, the discount store, the gas station, just like whatever catches my eye, I'll go with that.
Like the sharks and the little sharks and like I forget all the things they have. But yeah, those are good. My mom actually, when I was growing up, my mom would give me the Lifesaver gummies every Easter. And I would
Those are
just
good.
crush, and I'd have like 7 pounds of sugar in
Yeah,
like one
solid.
snacking. So yeah, maybe that's the key. We just got to tweet out different candies all year, and Candy
Yeah.
will just start ripping. So, all right, number 14. I'm going to go with Gavin Lux. New Red Gavin Lux. I was looking at my list, and I think I actually did what you did with TJ Friedel. I was like, where's Gavin Lux on my list? I think he's the top. I think again, I just like his upside. I don't think he's obviously what he did in the second half last year with the Dodgers. I don't think that's the player he probably is. I think that was unrealistic to expect that's what he's going to be. But at the same time, the dude was a top prospect. And I think he's kind of figured it out a little bit. I think he can be just a solid player that you can plug in the lineup. He's going to play. I think he can play a decent third base. I think we haven't seen it a ton, but it hasn't been an issue in spring training. Again, I feel good about someone like him being the designated hitter, or if Candy's the DH and you put him at third. I just feel better about those two as being a DH than certain guys that we had DH last season. So I don't think he's going to be like, again, the guy that you saw in the second half last year where he was playing like a top 10 player in the league offensively. But at the same time, I think he can kind of give you that baseline and be a solid player that you can plug kind of in the middle part to the bottom of the order.
Yeah. I had Lux at 15 on my personal list, so he falls 14 here, about the same. I think he's solid. I don't think he's spectacular. I think he's slightly above average. He's still young, coming off of an injury from 2 years ago. Like there's still some development there. And I think he's going to be a useful player who can play different positions, and that's why I had him at 15. Like that's still a useful player. It's nothing against him. I just think that, you know, in terms of outcomes, I don't think he has much power. I don't think he's a great defender. I think he's more of a chess piece, lefty bat, like solid overall player.
Yeah, awesome. Well, on to number 15, and then we'll recap 10 through or 11 through 15.
Number 15 for me was number 11 on my personal list, and that is Austin Hayes. I have said it before on other podcasts. I'll say it again. I think Austin Hayes is going to have the highest WAR of any of the outfielders. I think he's a better defender, at least like he has this cannon of an arm, which is something the Reds need in the outfield. I feel like it's lacked kind of some arm strength, and I do think his power will play up. Last year, again, another player who dealt with injuries, who didn't have the best season, only had 5 home runs last year. 3 years prior to that, 106 WRC plus, 107 WRC plus, 112, had an all-star appearance, doesn't strike out much. And like I said, I think the power will play up. So if we look back and, oh, wow, it's October and Austin Hayes had 20 home runs and, played every day and was a really good, cheap find for the Reds. Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, I like the pick. I mean, he's had a great spring training. And he's talked all offseason about how he had that whatever it was he dealt with last year at the end of the season, and that really screwed with him. He's like, I couldn't even see, I was dizzy. That's crazy to be playing with that. And that clearly it affected him. I think he's probably I know me, I'll use me as an example. Like when the Reds signed him, I probably didn't realize his numbers were as good as they were until I, looked into him and saw, wow, he's really performed lately. So I think he's kind of could be like an underappreciated guy right now that actually turns into being a really solid player for the Reds this year.
Was he on your list, or was this the first one that we do not have on each other's list?
He was on my list. He was going to be my next pick that I'm taking somebody else now.
Okay.
Clearly, besides Alexis Diaz, none of us care about the Reds bullpen.
Let's make sure to recap 10 through 15 here.
Yes, good call. 11 is Brady Singer. 12 is Andrew Abbott. 13 is Jamier Candelario. 14, Gavin Lux. 15, Austin Hayes. So I think pretty much we picked everybody that's going to play most every day besides this guy. Well, he's not going to play every day. He'll probably platoon a good amount. But I'm going to go with Jake Fraley. I think just another bounce back candidate. He was sick last year. He had his kid dealing with some cancer stuff, which is always, that definitely affects a person. I don't care what anybody says. With that, it was just a weird season. He hit 277, but there was no power. It was just like he was a single sitter last year, which I don't think that's really what Jake Fraley is. The 2 seasons before that, I mean, he only hit 5 home runs last year. The 2 seasons before that, he hit 15 and 12. So it's not like he's a big home run hitter, but his OPS in 2023 and 2022 was 783 and 812. I think he's a guy that you should be able to rely on of just hitting right-handed pitching. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that you plug in the lineup every day and he's going to hit lefties well. But, I mean, 2 years ago, I remember at one point there were people who were like, he's arguably the Reds' best hitter against right-handed pitching. So I think there is value there. And I think he's just a big bounce back candidate because it was just such a strange season last year. I mean, he stole 20 bases and 21 bases 2 years ago. So he steals some bags, but it was just so weird, his lack of power last year with only 5 home runs. Again, nobody's expecting him to go out and hit 25, but I think 5 is just very, very low for him. And I don't know if that was because of, the sickness he was dealing with or what, but I think there's just some upside for some turnaround there with Fraley.
I had him on 16 on my list. The thing about Fraley, do you have any idea? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. What his average exit velocity in his career is? If you had to guess.
Well, that you're saying this, I'm going to guess it's pretty low. So I'm going to guess, I don't know, like 88.3.
34.5.
Oh, man.
This guy just does not make very loud contact.
Barrels.
And
yeah.
the reason why his power played up at times was because of his playing in Great American Ballpark. So I do think he is the type of player that can have a season like last year with 5 home runs and a higher average because he's not impacting the ball very much. And there's going to be years that some get lucky and you get luck into 10, 12, 15, and some years that you have 5. I do think he'll be better than last year. I do like him as an option. I will, and I had him, I don't know if I said this, I had him at 16 on my personal
Yeah.
list as well. So falls in line here. I also wouldn't be surprised if they moved on from him at some point this year if it doesn't get better. Like he's one of those type of players that could have a really good outcome and be a really solid player near the bottom of the lineup, or a guy that they completely move on from. I could see either outcome, and that's kind of where we're getting to at this point in the list.
Yeah, 100%. And I meant to say this earlier and I forgot, but now I'm going to put you on the spot before we get to number 17. Can you take a stab at who was the Reds, who was 8th overall in WAR for the Reds in 2024? He's no longer with the team. I'll give you that hint.
Oh gosh, 8th overall in WAR is a very random number. I'm gonna guess it had to have been. Oh gosh, it's not a pitcher, right?
Fernando Cruz.
Oh
Fernando
my gosh.
Cruz. I was
Yeah, that
looking
says
at
a lot about this team last year. Holy crap.
I couldn't
Mike
believe my
Ford. I mean,
eyes.
how
I could not believe my eyes when I saw that. That's with, I mean, the second half of the season, that dude, he couldn't do anything. I think he was fine in September, but I mean, people were calling him to be sent down to AAA. He was the 8th
yeah.
best WAR player in 2024. All right,
Number
who you got for
number
17?
17 is actually number 13 on my list, and I think this is kind of where I screwed up the TJ Friedel thing, but I don't care. I like this as a hot take. Number 13 on my list, number 17 overall. Taylor Rogers.
Nice.
Kind of a
There's
random we're talking about a lefty in the bullpen here who has a solid track record, maybe getting near the end. The Reds traded for him. I just see an opportunity, especially like if Alexis Diaz doesn't go well. Like this is a guy who has closed games. This is a veteran who's coming in that is going to get opportunities late in games, I'm sure of it, and is going to have to perform. I don't know what the deal is with like a Sam Mole or whatever, but Taylor Rogers is going to be used against righties and lefties. He's not just a lefties only type. So to me, I think that's worthy of a top 20 and apparently a number 13 overall on my list, which even surprises me, and I made the list.
I love that. Yeah, well, that's our first reliever that's not the closer. So
Yeah.
clearly we
Oh, I've
don't
got
we don't
more.
really care about bullpens. But no, I think it's a solid choice. I mean, what everybody said when the Reds traded for Taylor Rogers was you're getting yourself a very solid reliever. And I think Sam Mole has struggled mightily in spring training. He just gave up another 4 runs yesterday, which take what you will. Sometimes that matters in spring training, sometimes it doesn't. But I think what's huge is that Sam Mole's not the only lefty in the bullpen. And you'll have a guy that like Taylor Rogers down there that can not only get lefties out, but can get righties out as well. So I think he's just a very solid piece, and I think a nice veteran addition to the bullpen. So, all right, number 18, I'm going with my first bullpen pick, and I'm going with Emilio Pagan.
Hey, I had him on my list too.
Let's go. So he's kind of similar, like I've said with a lot of these guys, is the guy that the Reds are paying $8 million to be, a guy in the bullpen, and he was kind of not very good last year. And then he got hurt at the end of the year or midway through the year and came back at the end. And it was just another guy that we're talking about, like another weird season for a Reds player. And he's a guy that, like you said, with Rogers that has closed games in the past when needed. So I think as many as those back end arms that as you can have, that you feel somewhat confident that can go in there and close a game if Diaz is struggling or if Diaz is hurt, the better. Because in previous years, I'm not always convinced that you could say the Reds had 3 guys that you were somewhat confident could go in there and close a game, which I think you can say this year with Diaz, Rogers, and Pagan, if Pagan gets back to kind of what he was before last season.
Yeah, and I thought I would sneak that one in on you. I didn't think you'd have that, so I'm glad we're on the same wavelength there. I just think
Love that.
Pagan has, at times in his career, been electric and been a good pitcher, and I think that that's still there, and the Reds are going to have an opportunity for him to earn that or prove that that contract he was given was worth it. And yeah, I just think that he's a top 20 player here. So he's at number 18. I'll go to number 19.
All right, last pick. Your last
Rhett
pick.
Rhett Lauder.
I love that pick. I
I'm
love that pick.
I'm going Rhett Lauder here. I know that he's probably not going to make the team out of camp, and he's dealt with this and that and whatnot, but still an important player, somebody who's going to get innings this year and has, a very high upside still. And I think that they're going to need him at some point. They're going to need starting pitching. So for that reason, Rhett Lauder's on my list. I need to plug in my computer, so I'll let you talk, but I'll walk off the screen.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think Rhett Lauder, he's honestly a guy that if he was going to make the rotation out of camp, I would have definitely had way higher on my list. But he's going through some injuries. He's probably not gonna make the team because he's hasn't even really pitched yet. And they said he's behind Abbott. So I think I think that's a solid pick. I think Lauder, what he did last year in his 6 starts in the majors, and then not only the 6 starts in the majors, but the second half of the year after he went through some struggles in Double-A, he just had a really solid year. And he's one of those guys that he doesn't blow you away with his stuff, but he just seems like he knows how to pitch. And the interesting thing about his major league numbers last year is he walked a lot of guys, and that's not really what he's known for. He's known for, command and placing the ball where he wants to place it. So interesting. He's one of those guys too, where they say, his numbers weren't, his back end numbers don't support, his whatever ERA that or whatever it was. But again, solid player, and he's 19th on our list, which I think says a good thing about the Reds pitching depth.
I personally had him at 17. I just know that they're going to need him at some point in time. I think, like long-term projection, I think he's at best a 3 and probably more of a number 4 or 5, but a really, really solid one at that. And that's not me clowning on him or anything like that. That's a good pitcher, a 3 or a 4 who's solid for several seasons. That's tough to find, and they're expensive too. So Rhett Lauder, 19 on the list. That means I'm going to have at least one, probably 2 guys on my list that do not make our collective list. So
I don't
think
this guy's going to be on your list, and I couldn't help myself here. But this is another upside play. But I'm going with Noelvi Marte. Noelvi Marte, number 20. So here's my thought process. And I know he's obviously just got sent down. He's been terrible. He was terrible in the Winter League. He was terrible, terrible last season. He's been terrible in the spring. I just think if he can go down in the minors, a la like Will Benson in 2023, and just kind of find himself. I was actually listening to someone the other day, and they joked that I think it might have been Trace from Chatterbox, and he said, send him to Dayton. And I honestly think the dude has just lost his confidence. And I mean, I play sports, I play golf, I play baseball when I was growing up in high school, and when you lose confidence, there's no worse feeling. And I can't even imagine that at the major league level when dudes are throwing you 88 mile per hour sliders and you're just swinging at them. I have no clue what's coming. I think the talent is there. Do I think he is actually going to have a big impact on this Red season? Probably not. But if he can just go down there for 2 months and just find himself a little bit, play a decent third base, and just, poke into that talent a little bit, I think he can be, a big part of this team for the second half of the year. But I don't think that's probably going to happen. I just picked this straight on upside. I think he's got a lot more upside than a guy like Will Benson, because Benson's never going to play against lefties, even when he's tearing the cover off the ball. And I didn't really want to take another bullpen arm, so I just kind of went with the upside play here, even though, like I said, I knew you didn't have it on your list, and it's kind of a crazy pick, but I couldn't leave him off.
No, it makes sense, and you did a great job of explaining why. I just think Marte is so broken at this point in time that he just has a lot of boxes to check before I think he can fall into the important discussion, which is why my 2, I'll go ahead and give you my 2 that did not make the list here. Number 18 is Jose Trevino, and he's going to play a lot. And
Yeah.
I think that he is bringing a leadership aspect and a component of working with the pitching staff that could be vastly important. What if he, in his experience as a great catcher who works well with pitchers, like what if he can get that little bit of more juice out of Nick Lodolo? What if he can get a little bit more out of this pitcher, that pitcher, help this guy read? Like he could theoretically help multiple pitchers on this staff improve. So for me, Trevino's 18, and then 20 is your guy. I think you bought a jersey of this guy, Santiago Espinal, your favorite Red.
Yes. Yes.
And the
Santiago.
reason why is that guy's just going to play. He's
Yeah.
going to play. So for me, that's important enough that something happens at third base, something happens at second, short, even in the outfield spot here or there. And we saw him make good contact and put up good baseline numbers at points last year. So for me, Espinal is going to get enough run. And if he is at least average or even slightly below average, like that is close enough. He was number 20 on my list.
Yeah, I mean Espinal is one of those, like, he hits left-handed pitching well,
Mhm.
and he's also just seems like a Terry Francona guy, like a guy that's gonna make contact. He's not gonna strike out a lot. He's pretty solid defensively. The Trevino pick I like a lot as well. I mean, he's I heard a story again going. I think this was said on the Jim Day podcast, but like it said, or it might have been the whatever the Wednesday night show that they do, Reds. I don't remember what it's called.
Red's Hot Stove or
Yeah,
whatever.
Red's Hot Stove. There you go. They said he went up to Alfredo Duno on the Reds caravan by himself and just started, like, sat with him and just started, like, giving him tips. I'm like, you know how many catchers, major league catchers, would never even think about doing that? Be like, I don't
Yeah.
care about this 18-year-old kid. Like, that just shows of what kind of guy he is. And I think there was another comment of, like, the first thing he did was ask for all the pitchers and pitches that all the bullpen guys throw when he got signed by the Reds. And I mean, that's invaluable stuff, for a guy that's,
I
like you
don't
said,
know
he's
if
going to
you've
play a
seen it, but
decent.
like all the Yankees fans when he was traded were like sharing all these incredible stories of him doing this to make this man's day and like him going to his daughter's, show your parents career day thing and he
Oh yes,
dressed
I
up
saw
in
that. That
full
was
catcher
amazing.
gear to go to like this guy's just awesome, man.
Yeah,
And we not you and I, but we being fans sometimes underrate the aspect of a clubhouse dynamic. But when you think about it, man, you spend 180 something days with these guys. Like having someone who's just an awesome person lifts the mood and like it just helps so much. And sometimes having somebody who's not a great person can do the complete opposite. So for me, backup catcher, good defense, great at running with the pitching staff, leadership, experience, playoff experience, like that to me, top 20 guy. And the fact that you didn't have him in there, Greg, is disgusting.
listen, he would have been honorable mention for me. He made honorable mention,
I
but
had him at 18. I'm acting like I had him at 4.
we'll recap 16 through 20, and then we'll get out of here. I appreciate you being on here, Clay. This has been a lot of fun. 16, Jake Fraley. 17, Taylor Rogers. 18, Emilio Pagan. 19, Rhett Lauder. And 20, Noelvi Marte. So I think a great list. I think it was a lot of fun. I don't think I had anybody really like that stuck out. I think I had Scott Barlow at number 19,
Ooh.
randomly. Again, just a bullpen arm that has some experience you can kind of count on. He's not anything amazing, um, you know. But I think everyone else we pretty much hit. I think we only had a couple that we were way off on. I
Yeah.
probably reached with like CES. Noel V. Marte was probably like 37th on your list. But other than that, I think we were we
I
were
didn't
pretty solid.
consider Marte, but I was trying to think of more. Okay, who from the minor and this is relevant. Who from the minor leagues could come up and really like become important? And okay, Red Lauder.
Yeah,
And then I was like, okay, like maybe Zach Maxwell, but like I cannot put top 20 importance on a minor league relief pitcher. And then I was thinking,
yeah,
okay, like who else? And it kind of made me realize this team does not have the depth in the minors of here's an upcoming prospect that we've all been watching for years and they could debut this year. Those players have come up the past 2 years. That's now what the team is. So for me, it was getting kind of thin, and it made me realize, okay, like, Jacob Hurtubise and Reese Hines and all these Will Bensons, even Blake
Blake
Dunn, all,
Dunn,
all
yeah.
these guys are kind of like, okay, I hope they don't become part of the top 20 most important, because that means a lot's probably gone wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say, I think it feels like the only reason Hurtubise, Benson, or Dunn are really going to make the team is probably because Steer's going to start the season on IL, is what it sounds like. Um, but without that, I think you feel pretty good about the top, 26. But one question back on Marte, just one question I wanted to ask you before we got off. Do you feel like he's going to be like go down the Jose Barrero path? Or do you feel like he can come back? Do you feel like he can come back from this?
Nah, I don't know, man. Like,
It's been rough.
Barrero is still a mystery to me. Like, I truly, I know there was an injury that I was kind of like, oh, that's why. I just don't really know what happened to Jose Barrero, but um, I think a lot of Marte has to do with maturity and just the mental side. I mean, I think he made some boneheaded errors last year that he had no reason for making, and I think he had some growing up to do. So if he comes in and says, "I'm happy, I'm going to the minor leagues because I realize I need to earn this the right way," and come back up and kind of refocuses, like, I still think that there's a good player there. I mean, he showed even in a small sample in 23 that he can be a major league player, and we can talk about the steroids after, whatever. I think he has a greater chance of being a major leaguer than a similar situation with Jose Barrero.
Yeah, I love it. Last thing I'll hit you with before we go on the way out. Um, how do you feel about Terry Francona this spring? Do you feel it feels like there's a different vibe with the team? I mean, it just feels refreshing to me.
I
What are
want
your
to
thoughts?
grab that guy's face and give him a kiss on the forehead, man. I love him.
He's
I love
amazing.
that guy. And I was not a David Bell fan. The majority of the David Bell tenure, I was kind of like, I want more from this guy. Like, I don't dislike him. Like, I honestly had no feeling at all. Like, I wanted to dislike him or like him, but I just couldn't go either way until, because it was late 23, early 24, in 20. Like, at some point, I just got so sick of the canned answers, the straight faced, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else but there. And oh, yeah, he got kicked out of games and stuff. Cool, man. Like, he never really said the right thing.
Yeah,
It was hard to be inspired, and a back to the clubhouse thing. You're going to spend a lot of times with this guy, and I think his message got old. I think the delivery got old, and honestly, his body language did. So let's flip the switch, bring in a guy with tons of experience, a ton of attitude, hilarious. Like, he just seems like the type of person you gravitate towards. If you were at a party and you did not know who that was, you would eventually end up talking to this guy and kind of hanging out with him. That's the type of guy Tito is, and I think it's exactly what this clubhouse needed. And I think he brings a perfect blend of a little bit of old school in a way with the analytics and the platoons and kind of the newer school, quote, for lack of a better term, thought process. So I could not possibly be happier. And when it happened, I thought, yeah, I think I like this. I've always liked Francona. Let me just, like, is this kind of just an old guy coming back for one more? And the more and more and more I hear from him, and the further it goes, the more I love the guy.
yeah, I'm totally with you. There's two things that stood out to me, and the first one is there actually the reason I asked the question. Going back, we were talking about Marte, and he gave a quote to, I think, Mark Sheldon, and was like, his stats weren't great, but he came in with a good attitude and whatever. And he's like, we took him in our office and we looked him in the eye and said, go down there and hit the ball. And I was thinking at that moment, I was like, what would David Bell have said? And I was like,
Yeah.
David Bell would have been like, well, Noelvi Marte, he's really a part of our team.
Oh,
And
yeah, he's got a lot of baseball left. Like, we'll see how it plays out. And,
it would have been the worst answer ever. And I
yeah,
just saw that quote from Francona. I was like, that's refreshing. Like, they just said, hey, we talked to him, and we just told him how it is. Like, you gotta go down there and crush the ball. You came to spring, your stats weren't there, and whatever. And then the second thing, this has nothing to do with baseball, but yesterday he was talking to MLB Network when MLB Network was at Reds camp, and he was just standing there talking with a baseball bat in his hand. I was like, I love this
Yeah.
guy. This guy loves
Yeah.
baseball. Like he's like your like little league coach that was just always had the baseball bat.
Yeah.
Like standing there, he's leaning on it, and I was like, it's so refreshing compared to what it was with David Bell. So
It is. It is. And it's time to turn the page. You got the new manager, you have the superstar, you got a young core, you have the ace. Now get new jerseys. I'll just leave it at that.
I love that. We'll leave it at that for the mic drop. Again, you can follow Clay on Twitter at it's Clay_Snow, correct? And you can read all of his stuff on justbaseball.com. He writes some great stuff, so go read his articles there. But Clay, appreciate the time. We went about an hour here. That was a lot of fun. The season starts up in a couple weeks here. So with that, we'll say go Reds. And Clay, again, appreciate the time today.
Thanks.
All right. See you guys.